Okay. All right. It is week 3, end of week 3. And I have to do my check-in. So, okay, I didn't have anything like super crazy that came up this week. I think it was more just grief. Just a lot of grief. Like, I'm having a really hard time going to sleep at night. And so I've been taking some like sleeping things, some like medication to help me sleep. Just because at night I get like very sad about Muxu, my cat. So, okay, so this week, some interesting things did come up. So it was about recovering a sense of power. And it said, you know, oh, you'll probably have bursts of energy and then sharp peaks of anger, joy, and grief. Yes. And then I had written down, like, anger is a map. It shows us where our boundaries are. Anger is not the action itself. It is action's invitation. So it's like, now that you have this anger, now that you're aware of this anger, what are you going to do with it? And we touched on like synchronicity. I remember there was a synchronicity, but I can't remember what it was. Maybe it'll come back to me. There was something that happened this week where I was like, oh, this would be a great thing to include in my recap or whatever. It'll come back to me. I don't know. I don't remember what it was. So, but yeah, we talked about synchronicity, and it was like, watch out for what you pray for, you just might get it. And the author gave an example of a woman that was the verse. She was dreaming of going to acting school, and then she sits at the dinner next to a man who teaches beginner actors. I remembered my synchronicity. My grandma had actually invited me to go get coffee, kind of nearby, and it was in this little shopping center. And like earlier that day, I remember waking up feeling like so angry because of my cat, like angry and grief. And I was like talking to my grandma about it early in the morning, and she was like, I don't know, this conversation kind of came up about things that I like to do, or like playing the piano. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of like to play the piano. And she was like, oh, your sister never played the piano? And I said, no, she liked the piano. We started playing piano at the same time. I was what, 4 or 5, and she was like 7 or 8. And we started taking classes together. And then like a few weeks into it, she stopped playing. Well, actually, we started piano and taekwondo at the same time. Those were the two activities. One was like mental and the other was physical. And I loved the piano, and she stopped playing the piano after a few weeks because she didn't like it. And then I stopped doing taekwondo because it just was like really overwhelming to me. Like I couldn't like handle going home and get beaten up and then going to this place to get beaten up. And so I just was like, I don't like it. And even to this day, any sort of like physical contact stuff, like it's just not really my thing. I'm more into like independent sports. But that conversation in the morning got me thinking, because when I woke up, I was like angry because my cat, like Muxu, would always wake me up in the morning, and he wasn't there. And I was just like so angry, and I'm like, what the fuck is my life right now? Like I just didn't recognize anything. And I was like, maybe I try something new. Like what if I try actually leaning into that, and like what if I do like boxing or something? What if I try boxing and like getting the energy out that way? And it makes me feel really nervous because, of course, as a child, like I have a lot of trauma around like physical contact in that way, which is normal. But then I'm like, well, I'm an adult now. Like I can maybe rewire those parts of my brain. And so, anyways, my grandma had invited me to coffee. We went to this little shopping center, and there was a martial arts place in the shopping center. I'm like, huh. And then I ended up like looking at their information, and the first class was free. So I think that's going to be my artist date into this coming week, into week 4. But that was a little synchronicity that was like, oh, it was just like right there, right next to the house. And I'm nervous, but that was my synchronicity. Then, yeah, so in the book, the author's talking about synchronicities. And I remember like when I did this book last year, I had also realized that like I felt like there was this like a mismatch between what I was putting out artistically and what I was getting, either in like financially, energetically. I kept like I was just putting out and putting out and putting out and putting out. I just kept feeling drained, like really, really drained. And I'm like, okay, something isn't aligned here. Like the input isn't, and I know that as an artist, just because you make something and you like put it out into the world doesn't mean immediate return. There's some paintings that are like that, and for whatever reason the right person sees it at the right time and it like clicks. But a lot of pieces, they need time for the right person to come along and to match with it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when you're like living in LA and trying to build this thing from scratch, and like it needs to move, like it needs to move. And so I realized that like I had started teaching workshops, and I felt like I was just like doing workshop. And I love to teach. Like I found it so fulfilling. Just like talking to people, meeting new people, helping people like reconnect to their creativity in maybe the first time since like childhood, or maybe in just a new way if they're like actively pursuing the arts in some kind. But I was like, there's so much more that I'm gonna sneeze. There's so much more that I want to include, where I felt like my workshops could only take me so far. And so I had started really thinking about like, okay, what is the life that I want to live, right? And I really, really, really wanted to teach retreats, because the 2-day workshops that I was doing in LA were like kind of the master class option that I offered. And at first I was doing them every two Saturdays in a row. And then I like got a lot of feedback from people that came to the class, and it was like, oh yeah, 2 Saturdays in a row is really hard, or like it's just so difficult to find people who have like 2 consecutive Saturdays in a row to do something. So then I had consolidated everything down and did Saturday and Sunday. So it's a full weekend dedicated to this workshop, which proved to be like more aligned and more people could do it. They could participate in something like that. Except I feel like there was just so much more information that we were missing out on, and that I gained from working with natural pigments and working with these materials specifically, that I just couldn't quite like do. I couldn't quite reach within just 2 days. And so I started looking at doing retreats instead. And it was one of those things where like I had really researched, okay, because I had personally done retreats in the past, but I never really thought about like teaching them, partially because when I was so young, I hadn't even like found my groove yet in art. But 2, I just never like really thought that I could do it. And now I feel way more capable, and it's not a matter of me doing it, it's just how do I actually want it done. And that's been something I've been exploring over the past like year, I guess, when I first did this freaking book. But funnily enough, like I had revisited that idea back in Mexico, back when I was in Mexico, and I was like, I'm just gonna start, you know, hypothetically speaking, what kind of a place would I want to like host something like this with or in? What kind of a place would I want this retreat to be in? And then there was like a random post on the internet of like this place looking for workshop leaders, and one thing led to another, and now I'm like hosting a retreat later this year. More information to come, but that was like a synchronicity where when I finally just made up my mind, I'm like, hypothetically, regardless of why, all the reasons it can't work, where would I even do this? What would this look like? And it was like, boom, I came across this post that had been posted like earlier that morning in search of like workshop leaders. So that was a synchronicity, but that happened earlier. Oh my God. And then I even wrote down my boxing thing as a synchronicity. So I was going to remember it anyways. Okay. So then, yeah. And then she had written, I had learned as a rule of thumb, never to ask whether you can do something. Say instead that you are doing it. Then fasten your seatbelt. The most remarkable things will follow. Very true. Understand that the what must come before the how. First choose what you want to do. The how usually falls into place in itself. That's a mantra I've been telling myself for years. Just like, because you get so caught up in the how. You get so caught up in like, well, how, you know, how is this money going to come in? How am I going to make the move? How am I going to find people for a retreat? Or how am I going to make a painting that big? You know, like, how am I going to do it? And it doesn't matter. It's like, put your mind to it, and somehow, like by you switching to that frequency, people are going to start coming in. The right people will come in, the right opportunities will come in. But it's one of those things where like that step is not going to appear until you actually make the move towards it. You know, like jump and trust that you'll be caught. Okay, yeah, and then shame. She talked about shame. So shaming someone is an attempt to prevent the person. Yeah, shaming someone is an attempt to prevent the person in a way that embarrasses us. I may have written that wrong, but making art is like telling a secret. What will they think of us? Or how like certain families react. Like, how dare you when like a child stumbles upon a family secret? Like, how dare you go into a dark place where we hide those things that we don't want you to know? I very much feel myself at that position. I don't know, at times I feel like there's just this big elephant in the room, and I'm just kind of like, yeah, I know it's there if you want to talk about it, but who am I to, how do I word this? Sometimes I feel like I'm the glue in my family. Well, maybe not even the glue, because I'm very much like isolated and I've just been kind of on my own. I'm just that person in the family that's like, oh, you know, that cousin that lives out there, or like lives in the US, and she's like an artist and she kind of just like does her own thing. She doesn't really talk to anybody. And in part, me being so isolated is because I just thought that like, I thought that my entire family knew what was going on. Like as a child, I could see, oh, my immediate parents don't care about my well-being, and they allow this like abuse to happen and they partake in it. So my entire family is like that. Because how could you be an adult and like not know that this is happening? But now coming back to Brazil as an adult myself and like talking to family members, they didn't know. They were basically, the response is like, we knew something was weird, but we didn't know it was like that. Because also anytime we did come to Brazil, my parents were like on their best behavior. Like my family was on their best behavior. It was like so strange to me. And I think maybe that's why I also have such fond memories of Brazil, because it was like when my parents were actually good. You know, when we were here, it was like there was no stress, like everyone got along. My parents laughed a lot. Like they were completely different people than when we would go back to the United States. They would like morph into a different person. And so every time I would go back to the US, I would have these like panic attacks on the plane because I knew what I was getting, what I was returning to. And now that I'm like talking about it, talking about what I went through in a way that isn't like in code hidden in my art. You know what I mean? I'm being like open about it. I do hear that sense of shame in my head that's like, how dare you? We don't talk about those things publicly, or like, these are family matters. And I trace that thought back to like when I was in middle school. I remember I had like tried to talk to my counselor at school about what was going on, and she like called my parents. I remember my dad had like sitting me down. He sat me down and was basically like convincing me that none of those things happened, but also like, it's good that you're getting help, but we don't talk about family issues. What happens in the family stays in the family. And it was like so much shame, because it was like, what do you think? Imagine how they're going to think of us. Do you think this is how I am? You think this is how the family is? Imagine what they think of us. Like, we came to this country to work, and it was like so manipulative. And yeah, so interesting that we're like talking about shame this week. And then I had taken a note like, the act of making art exposes society to itself. Art brings things to light. It illuminates us. It sheds light on our lingering darkness. I feel like that encompassed what I am making in my paintings. They're very, very simplistic. And like, the more that I started sharing with them, I got two very opposite reactions. I had so many, like when I was sharing more consistently, like especially online on like Instagram and stuff, I had on one side people being so supportive, and they're like, I don't know what it is, something about this speaks to me, or like there's something there that I feel, and like I just got so many supportive like messages, feedback. And on the other hand, it was like, this looks like shit. Anybody could do this. What the fuck is this? This isn't even art. Like, you call yourself an artist. You should go to art school. Ba 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 ba. Like, this isn't real art, and like all that stuff. And so I think regardless of the answer, regardless of the reaction, it was interesting to see, like, as a whole, this is where society is, right? Like, does art need to be comfortable in order for it to be good? And does it being uncomfortable, like, why does uncomfortable art bring such a visceral reaction out of people? Yeah, I'm just okay, my brain's going like a different direction now. Yeah, okay, so when people do not want to see something, they get mad at the one who shows them. They kill the messenger. Yeah, okay, that's where my brain was going to go, because it's one of those things where it's like, when you're talking to people about your reality or about your truth, they might see the world through a different lens. And so specifically when you're talking about reality, like, you have to be so careful, because everybody else sees the world in a different perspective. Everyone has different perspectives, and when you bring yours to the table, or when you bring yours to light, it might be so like psychologically debilitating for someone else that like they just can't handle it. Like, you are completely changing their reality, and so that's not something that's easily just like thrown out there. You know what I mean? Like, you can mess people up. And so I realized that like talking about all of this I'm sure I'm going to get some kind of pushback from my family. But then again, like, I know what happened. I know my truth because I lived it. And for years, like my entire life, I've been under this cloud of silence that I need to obey and take it. And that's just how life is. And we don't bring attention to ourselves. And, we don't bring shame to the family. But why the fuck am I protecting people who never protected me? Why am I protecting people who actually hurt me? And so I'm feeling a lot of that anger come up. And like, I think when I was in my mid-20s and I finally got diagnosed with like CPTSD, it answered so many questions, because for the longest time I was like, oh, I'm fucked up. Like I am a bad person, because I mean, my child brain was like, bad people get hurt, right? And because I was like continuously getting hurt, I thought I deserved it. And it's taken like a really long time. And it's still something that I'm like working through, obviously. That like, it wasn't my fault. And I am allowed to talk about it. I am allowed to talk about it. And people's reactions are out of my control. I can't do anything about them, and I also can't continue to punish myself in the way that I was punished through silence. Okay, then I had written down, for example, like a child from an alcoholic, this is what the author had written. A child from an alcoholic home gets in trouble scholastically or sexually. The family is flagged for being troubled. The child is made to feel shame for bringing shame to the family. But did the child bring shame? No. The child brought shameful things to light. What will the neighbors think is a shaming device aimed at continuing a conspiracy of illness? Yeah, there's so much stuff there. There's like so much shame. And I know that like shame is like a really big symptom in CPTSD. But yeah, I always think about like the image, right? Like protect the image, or like this image that my family always gave of us being like this perfect immigrant family and, having everything together. And then when I had started imploding as like a teenager, after just like years of all of it, one of the main things that was said to me was like, what do you think the neighbors will think? Like, oh, are you, sabe, você é menina da rua, você não tem casa, você não tem pai, não tem família, and I kept thinking like, no, actually, I don't. And like, what is this? Like, it was this push and pull, you know what I mean? And it felt like every time I would kind of, for a while, every time I would pull myself away and like try to be, like stay over at my friend's house more, to like get out of the house, or like take on extracurriculars to like get out of the house and like make space to try to like be more independent. It was like pulling me back in. All of a sudden I was like very, very nice behavior, super like loving, and like, oh, do you want to go shopping? Hey, like, why? I know you wanted those new boots, you know what I mean? And it was like straight up just like grooming or hoovering. And so I became very used to this like push and pull kind of dynamic. And yeah, but it was always like, I had to make sure that as if the neighbors were like always watching, you know what I mean? Like oh my God, we lived in like a really nice community on a lake. And so all the neighbors knew each other. And I think looking back, I'm like, one of my neighbors, like it was this couple, and we were really close with them. Like they'd always come over for dinner. We'd go to their house like all the time for game night and stuff like that. And I remember the wife would always tell me, like, if you ever want to come over, like, we have an extra bedroom, if you ever want to stay here and, like, take a break from mom and dad. And I was always like, ha ha ha, like, nothing's wrong, you know what I mean? Like, because I knew if I were to do that, it would just, like, open a whole can of worms. But also, I didn't trust anybody. At that age, I was like a teenager already. And I'm like, if I tell someone, I'm gonna be fucked, like I lost all trust in people. And so I would treat people super badly. I just like became this super like awful, really, really awful person, and got like really into drugs and like drinking and like all of that stuff, which took me a really long time to like climb out of. And I ended up like going to treatment and like had a couple suicide attempts, and so that brought like all the shame on the family, because it was like, the family's so perfect, why would this girl try to kill herself? And it was like, from the outside it probably looked totally fine, at least for a while, because I was really good at hiding everything. It kind of felt like I lived this double life. But then, yeah, like I realized in treatment that like I actually had to get out. And so I just kind of buckled up, did everything I could. It was actually like in treatment so a year previously, I was 16 at the time. A year previously, I had applied to this like arts high school in my state. And I, applied, you had to like audition to get in. Did that whole process, and then I was like waiting to hear back. And I remember the next year, before hearing about like acceptance or not, I was in treatment, and I remember being at like the lowest point in my life, and I just was like, there's no point in any of this. But I knew that the school, I still was waiting on like hearing about the exception from the school. And so I had told myself, like, in treatment, literally the first night that I got there, I was like, if I don't get in, I will know that like that's it. You know what I mean? I just felt like art was always my calling, but I just wasn't necessarily supported in it. My parents were like, yeah, that's fine, but like, why don't you go into architecture? Because they were both architects. And they're like, you can't really make money from that. But I was like, I don't care. I'm going to make it work. I don't care. I know you can't make money from it. I can make money from it. Like I just knew. But I told myself, like, if I get accepted into this school, I will get my shit together and I will dedicate my life to the arts. I'll know that it's truly my calling. And what do you know? I got a letter that I was accepted. And so I realized that that was like a door out, and that I could run. And so, I just like did the program. I was like an inpatient for a few more weeks, and then like did outpatient for like 6 months. And then I was able to go to this art school that had like a dorms. It was very Zoe 101, like where the school is on campus and then there's like dorms next door. And that was like where I went to my final year of high school. And it was like you spent like the morning doing like your main classes, and then the afternoon was like your art elective. So there was like visual arts, music, theater, and I had chosen visual arts. And so, and with that, like I just kept moving, you know what I mean? Like it just, that school like opened up doors for me, and I just never looked back. But yeah, I moved into the dorms there, and then shortly after I had like gotten an apartment in Minneapolis, and like this is a whole other story. I went on a whole tangent, but the shame, okay, the shame of everything. It still took me like quite a few years to really see what was going on, because I just thought like, still there's this little voice in my head like, no, they just didn't know any better. They, as in my whole family, they just didn't know any better. When then it's like, no, they knew what they were doing. they knew what they were doing. And that truth is like really hard to come to terms with. And I still find myself kind of like circling through it. And then there was another part that was saying like, art brings healing, but before a wound can heal, it must be seen. And this act of exposing the wound to air and light, the artist's act, is often reacted to with shaming. Yeah. Yeah. And so she had this whole point of like dealing with criticism and like following the criticism back. And like things came up like, you know, oh, this, for example, like more recently with like my art, right? Posting about my paintings online, and people being like, well, it's not that good, or like, this is art, or no. And it reminded me, like, I had kind of followed that thought back, and it reminded me of like any time that I had some kind of competition or some kind of contest, and if I didn't win, it was always like for my parents like, oh well, you know, like I had written down when I got my grades, right, it was like all A's, and then maybe there was like a B, and they would say, but you got a B. They wouldn't be like, wow, look at all these A's. It was like, what about that B? We got to get that up, huh? Or in like band, I got second chair and not first chair, and they were like, well, why didn't you get first chair? Why haven't you been? How much do you think that girl how much do you think the girl in chair 1 practices? Why don't you do that? You know, it was more like critical about the things that I wasn't doing and the accomplishments that I didn't get, rather than encouragement of the good things that I did. And so rewiring that for myself in my brain has been really important. Like, did all that stuff. Okay, so this was really cool. She had like 20 things that we had to write out, and it was called detective work and exercise. And there were all of these like things that you had to fill in the blanks. So the first was, my favorite childhood toy was my apartment blocks with stickers. I'll see if I can find a picture of this. This was like a toy from the early 2000s, and I loved it. I'll try to see if I can find a picture and like put it in the video. My favorite childhood game was Double Dutch. The best movie I ever saw as a kid was Treasure Planet. If you haven't seen Treasure Planet, it's so good. I feel like it's one of those films that's like so looked over, and at the time they said it was like one of the biggest flops ever, but go watch Treasure Planet if you haven't seen it. I don't do it much, but I enjoy playing the piano. If I could lighten up a little, I'd let myself model. I don't know, I always wanted a model. I thought it was so cool to like be on a magazine. If it weren't too late, I'd be a rock star. My favorite musical instrument is the piano and the trumpet. I couldn't choose. The amount of money I spend on treating myself to entertainment each month is $40. If I weren't so stingy with my artist, I'd buy him/her a giant roll of canvas. Taking time out for myself is scary. I am afraid that if I start dreaming, I'll get too high and I'll fall. I secretly enjoy reading. I don't know if it's considered reading, but it's like audiobook smut. If I had a perfect childhood, I'd have grown up to be more mentally stable. If it didn't sound so crazy, I'd write or make a psychological thriller script and shoot it as a film. My parents think artists are broke but free. My God thinks artists are guides. What makes me feel weird about this recovery is how much it's showing me that I don't show up for myself consistently. Learning to trust myself is probably one of the most difficult things I've ever done. My most cheer-me-up music is bossa nova classics. My favorite way to dress is chic, minimalistic, all black, elegant. Then she had us describe our childhood room. You could sketch it. I did sketch it, and it looked like this. So I had like, you walked in here, okay? And this was the window, which was my favorite part because I would watch the sunset, and the neighbor's house, like watching. So this was like my window with my desk, and I would like draw and paint here. My bed, and then I had a shelf above with like all my toys and like my Mr. Piggy, and I had this like box that I kept all my favorite things in. This was one of those old school IKEA hangers that you could like put all of your things in. It was like this hanging cloth with openings. Then I had my closet, and here I had a mirror with like the puffy paint, like lyrics and notes and little doodles and stuff. And then this wall I had painted as a chalk wall, and I would draw like I'd make little murals with chalk, and that was one of my favorite things. But yeah, then she had written good things, or like the things that we liked about our bedroom and what we would do, or what if the things that we had liked about our bedrooms, and to how could we bring those elements into our room now. And I had like, my favorite part was the fact that I could see like the sunset, and I can see the sunset. And then I had like written little notes to myself and like put them on my mirror, because I really liked that when I was getting ready in the morning, I could like read these little things. So yeah, then okay, there was like all this other stuff about people that you look up to. I don't know how in depth I'm gonna get into this, because I feel like this video is gonna be really long. But let me just do my check-in. So, how many days this week did you do your morning pages? How was your experience for you? So I only skipped one day because I forgot. I woke up when we had to get up like really early. And I kind of like woke up a little late, so I didn't do it. But I did them 6 days this week. And the experience was good. I kind of just, I'll be writing about things that like bother me, or whatever I dreamt about that night, and then they kind of always just end up about my cat. Like how much I miss my cat. I did do my artist date this week. It was good. I actually went to the floral store, greenhouse, what is it, the flower shop, and it was so beautiful. I thought that I could go and get some kind of plant that reminded me of my boy, and I could like plant it in the garden for him. And so I had found these seeds for a flower that they're like really, really colorful, but the name just really struck me. It was something like amor gigante or something like that, like gigantus love, enormous love. And that's just how I felt about him. Like he was just this enormous love in my life. Okay, I think I'm gonna bring this one, the amor perfeito gigante, perfect love. I'm gonna plant this one in the garden for Poosh. And it was nice because the place was this giant flower shop, and there is a what's it called, a macaw in the palm tree above the shop, and there were actually 3 of them. One had this really, really long tail. They were like chatting with each other, and they're so beautiful, like really long yellow tail, and they had like blue feathers, and they were just so beautiful. And then there was a little cat there, and the worker was like, yeah, he doesn't really let you touch them, he just kind of like wanders. And he came, sat next to me, and then the worker was like, oh, there's kittens, we just got kittens. And I was like, do not let me see them, I'm not ready. Yeah, he was like, I can try to find them. And I was like, no, thank you. Then, what did I experience, or did I experience any synchronicity? Yeah. With the boxing, or the martial arts, like, place. And then were there any other significant issues this week that you consider significant for your recovery? Describe them. Yeah, I think the shame, like this concept of shame, and actually talking about what happened in my life, because I feel a calling to go deeper into my art and to share more. And I feel like I've built this space online that is very much connected to like natural pigments and their healing qualities, and the importance of like landscape and the physical and the intangible things, like that space in between, these curiosities of that space. But like I sometimes feel like a fraud for like talking about, like, promoting the sense of healing and na 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 na, but like not being so open with what I went through. And a lot of the reason why I don't is because of shame, because I feel like, well, if I talk about this, then what? Like, then what? It's like then it all falls apart or something, like the facade. And I think it's just a lot of responsibility that I'm putting on myself for thinking that, one, my silence is what is keeping this all together, because I've had multiple people now tell me like, yeah, we knew something was going on, but we didn't know that it was like that, or like, you know, like it was, yeah, very weird. Or there were multiple instances where like, specifically with like my dad, where they were like, you know, like not the safest person. And so me like talking about it is not going to be like, whoa, you know what I mean? But I think that because I turned out the way that I turned out, my parents take a lot of pride in it. And it's almost as if like, yep, you know, we did that, or we, like, that's our doing, when like absolutely not. Like this is my doing. And it was because I had distanced myself from them from such an early age that I was able to become the person that I am today. Like I can see how all of these difficulties that I've gone through isn't just, you know, oh, it's happening to me, or like, no, no, no. It's like, no, these are things that I had to go through in order to be the woman that I'm meant to be. Is it painful? Absolutely. Would I do it again? To be the person that I imagine myself to be, yeah, I would do it again. But I, like, I think it's also the little part in me that's like, no, don't talk about it, because then like you won't be loved. No one will like you. Like they're going to turn against you. You won't have support. You'll be alone. And I just kind of now, as an adult, am realizing, like, I'm about to turn 30 in next week. Is it next week? But I'm realizing, like, they don't really like me. And I am alone. And I haven't had support. And, like, I'm still fine. You know what I mean? I'm still able to do the things that I need to do. And not even that. It's like I've had difficulties, but I've like been able to surpass them on my own. And so those feelings of like, oh, like no one will like me, it's not really as scary anymore, because I'm like, I actually don't really care if anybody likes me. I know my people that are like meant to be in my life will love me, but I don't want to be liked by people who hurt me. Like I don't need their approval. I don't need their connection. I don't need that. Like when you've consistently shown me that you enjoy hurting me, and even after I vocalize like, hey, that hurts, and you still continue to do it, I don't need you in my life, you know? So yeah, I think I feel myself just kind of changing, and The more that I step into my like power as an artist and find strength in telling my story and taking that cover off and being like, look, right? It feels less and less scary. And I think that I don't know where this is going, but I know that regardless of whatever comes my way, like I can handle it and I have the strength to create safety for myself. So, yeah, that was week 3. That was week 3. So I'm gonna end it there. Era tão bonitinha. Assim?
É.
Brócolis. O que é aquela plantinha?
Mandioca.
Ah! Brócolis. É pra comer. Esse não come. Esse, vamos colocar num pote. Amor perfeito. Pra o Muxu. Come? É, dá pra comer.
Então,
Interessante.
ela falou que quando tem escrito assim, multi-isla, que é comestível.
Ok. Você quer colocar em qual ordem?
Vamos primeiro, as florzinhas.